point of security for me is that it is a collaboration between everyone. And the biggest problem is this, that is not how people are treating it in today's age. It is security's issue. It is security's problem. I'm sorry, but security is everyone's responsibility. The problem is we do not explain very well what that entails and what we do to collaborate on them as such, but also we don't actually tell people what to expect from ourselves. So what I hope today is that I explain a little about which types of security there are from a color perspective. It just makes it easier to translate it into business requirements and in having a dialogue around how we work and why we work in a certain way. But it also gives you hopefully a meaning and a way of detailing both to others, or when you buy a product, what are your requirements and what is it that I actually need? So if you can get some part of that today, I'm happy. So very short about me. What is ever on there doesn't really matter. I'm Angelique. I originally come from the Netherlands and I worked way too long. Started hacking computers since I was 3 years old. I burned down an insurance company at the age of 3, broke their entire system because of physical security. Ever since then, I pretty much got burned when it comes towards physical security and certain government buildings, but that's another thing. Worked in penetration testing quite a few years, mostly physical security. Then I went on to doing other stuff until people called the word information security analyst. After a few movies in 95's Hackers, then I just tried to not use that. I'm just me. Today, I don't work anymore for a certain bank. I moved 2 months ago, now consultant working within security and that which I call digital trust. Digital trust to me is basically everything information security, the way we perceive it, the way we walk with it, but from a confidentiality and privacy perspective, both analog and digital. The way we interact with people, the way we interact with everything going here, using our phones, everything. How we communicate is detrimental to me in general, and how we convey that. So that is basically my job. It doesn't sell well, and some people think it sells perfect, but that's a totally different thing. Worked in every single industry there is, except drugs. So yes, if you can think of it, most likely I have. So today, as I said, security is everyone's responsibility. And it is not singular people, it is all of us as a collective group of people. Doesn't matter who you are. If you have kids, you take care of your kid. That comes natural to us. But when it comes towards how we treat ourselves, what we do with our information on the internet, how we share things with our kids and everything, it is different. Now we step 2 steps outside, we go to work. And all of a sudden, that due care, that due diligence that we would have for our kids, for our friends, ourselves, goes out the door. Not my responsibility. It's my boss's responsibility. That is how a lot of people perceive security in general. The way we treat our computers, we don't do it in the exact same way. It doesn't come natural. And here I say everyone is responsible for their own security. Not just, but we can help each other out. So my point of the entire talk is that instead of explaining security by saying security is this or security is that, there are certain roles within society or within the work sphere that we have. And to ninja someone else's work, Proxy Blue and April Wright 4 or 5 years ago wrote a simple piece around color schematics. It is very basic around the pride flag and everything else, but they just ninja'd the way of showing people how security works. And in the traditional sense, we have blue and red teams. Blue being the defense of the organization and red being the attacker of the organization. But at the same time, we have hackers, which are black hats. We have the protectors, which are white hats. And we have everything in between. Now, to get to that point, the reason why I asked everyone, yeah, but what is your position? Well, we had the business, management. Well, according to this, they are dead center in a white collar. What does that then entail? Well, that I'll get to back later. But the point is that if we can at least convey our role within security, the next talk around, but how do I tackle the next issue, or how do I start talking with other people, becomes a lot easier. Do I still have everyone with me? Okay. So from a traditional perspective, we have very clear roles, and everyone loves DevOps and DevSecOps. But nobody knows what their responsibility is when you're in a DevOps team. I mean, developers do development. Okay, they are yellow. But what are the other responsibilities? Where's, for example, quality assurance? Where is compliance? The words themselves that they are using aren't actually describing the roles as such. And that is where a lot of people really get confused and start to misidentify, especially when they get non-functional requirements in their epic or agile list of things to do. It just doesn't work. So this way of working, by adding color, by adding a perspective of such, makes it easier to communicate. The business is able to communicate from the center as a stakeholder, easier to the developer. This is what I want. Can you help me with this? Then there's, of course, ever the same dilemma of, does the developer actually understand the business requirements and everything else? But there's, at least from a management perspective, a single pathway there. Now, the reason why this slide is so important is because, especially in Sweden, I'm sorry to say, we love our silos. I'm not Swedish, sorry. I did say we, but I've worked almost in every single country in the world. There's one country I can't say I've worked, but every other 297, so to speak, I've had some kind of contact or had a talk whatsoever. I visited 196 countries. Wow. The only one I haven't visited is Gambia. And yes, I've been to awkward places like North Korea. There's a lot of different segments and there's a lot of different cultures and whatever. But in Sweden, this thing with silos, everyone having their own single responsibility, it is not helping us. So we have developers just doing development. We have the security team doing their security team. No one knows what they're doing. That's usually something else. And then we have compliance, which comes with the questions of the business or the regulatory parts or the legal system saying, do this, do that. If we now put everyone in their little boxes within this wheel, we can all agree that there's multiple types of yellow. There's multiple types of red. There's multiple types. We know that the spectrum of colors is large. Just like there's people, there is a lot of colors. But the way we communicate and the way we perceive things and how we mix our competences is going to be detrimental going forward. But in Sweden, we very often, also within businesses, we put people in these single silos. We have first risk compliance. We have second line risk. We have third line audit. It's a very distinct culture. And when we work with security, it doesn't matter if it's for the business, securing the business from a business continuity management perspective, Or if we code, we create safe code, we work with OWASP related things, or we work in operations. We all have our different tasks to fulfill to make sure that the goal, the mission is there. But we work very, very siloed. We want to keep ourselves to our little thing. My point is, you shouldn't, but I'll get to that. If we then go through the wheel itself, we have yellow being all the builders and the architects, so the design perspective. We have red, the offensive parties, so hacking your organizations, I think pen testers, threat intel, or ethical hackers. And then we have the blue team. Yeah, there's also always a question, is it operations or is it the designated party in question? Anyone know what these colors mean, blue, red, and yellow in general? No. Have you ever heard of red versus blue? The gaming concept.
Yeah. In security? No,
just gaming.
Yeah.
So you put these two people against each other. Yeah. So blue against red. It's a team attack. So blue is usually the defending team and red is the attacking team. And the entire color schematic is about that. Originally, you just pit two teams against each other. Again, two silos against each other. Why? We're supposed to work for the same organization towards the same goal. We are supposed to converge towards the middle and come together. Because what do we do? What is the purpose of security? Can anyone tell me?
To protect.
Yeah, but what is it protecting?
Protect assets, company assets.
Okay, I want to challenge that, but I agree to some limited extent. So companies are there to contribute or to earn money, right?
Okay.
So the role of us within security is making sure that the outcome of the desires of the company are maintained and increased, and the amount of risk of not making those things happen are less likely impactful or do not contribute as much when it comes towards damage. So that's where your protection comes in. So we try to reduce the likelihood that we have the business operating, or that the manufacturing line has halted, or that our website becomes defaced, for example, which leads to reputational risk or not being able to work or deliver our products. I mean, that is where we essentially work within security. Now, if you then consider, if you're a coder, or backend developer, you write code, so very much yellow. But if you ask someone to deliver your code, who do you go for? Do you deploy it yourself, or?
You have the CI/CD department.
Yes, but who does the security part of it then?
Ideally, it should be the teams. The CD team should be responsible for the security.
Okay, so you put all the security to the continuous deployed, continuous integration team.
Yeah, ideally. They should be aware of it. Yeah.
Okay. Is, from a responsibility perspective, are they allowed to change your code?
What do you mean? Are they allowed to change the development?
Are they allowed to change your code?
No. Because if something...
How are they going to build in security?
So the CD team, they should not change the engineering team's code, because if something is broken, they cannot fix it. They're not aware of how it was built.
So if we go a little further, so I agree with what you're saying to a certain extent. So to make sure that we have a working code running in production, we would have a team working with production environments, be it outsourced or not. So let's call that blue for a second. And then you just want someone to magically make your code that was maybe or potentially secure. We don't know, could very well be insecure. I mean, I write 95% insecure code. So, and then it magically, by going through this green hose, ends up being secure.
No, it's a problem. You should trust the developers are writing a secure code.
Yeah, but that's my point. That is never. So, fine, I hear what you say. So, I used to hack organization. I used to drive red teams all the time. Who do you think was my #1 target?
Developers.
Management. You know why?
Awareness levels are maybe low. Also.
No.
At the most dropping.
No.
They don't know.
Do you know how scared developers are for management? Do this, make this function now, and you just deliver. Do you know how many errors a developer with time makes versus a developer that has management on their ass? It increases by 400%.
Oh,
Okay.
Do you know how much it increases when you add ChatGPT?
oh, a lot more.
1,000%.
1,000%.
Yeah, 1,000.
No, it initially goes down, then it skyrockets. And it's a hockey stick.
But ChatGPT learned all the bad code, you know.
Exactly. But it can do a lot of things, but that's why we are here with other tools. But the point is, we need to make sure that we create secure codes. Well, how do we create secure codes if we're never taught what secure code is? So here, I want people to find partners, friends in the environment, people like being here, to mix each other and learn from each other. So if you want to read or write better code, I want you to mix yourselves with a red team or a blue team person, because the blue team will help you understand and become from yellow to blue, become more green, knowing how to deploy your code in a safer way. There's no such thing as safe and there's no such thing as secure from 100% perspective, but it will at least make it safer. From an orange team perspective, well, knowing what the attacker can do with your code, with that knowledge, with that intel, you can make sure that you do not put that information in your code. There's also a lot of tools that can help you with this. And AI can, to some extent, help you there. Can also fuck it up because the source that they used is not that good. Anyways, if we look at the colors perspective, it's better if we work together. It is better when we start blending. Now, why do we do this then? Well, our attackers do the exact thing. I'm allowed not to curse today, so. No, but when we work for our organization or respective organizations, there's usually a value creation that is of interest for another party. And the more successful you are, the more threats you will face. So ideally, we make sure that from a coding perspective, from an operations perspective, we make sure that our company is not that easily attackable. But with modern technology that we're easily attackable in an open world, it's getting a lot easier and a lot more difficult. And the attackers utilize all these tools that we have out there. So the only reason we have is being better, applying cyber hygiene or, well, basic things. I mean, we learned to wash our hands for the past 3 years, or at least most of us do. We learned social distancing. I mean, we still sit kind of close together, but I wouldn't have seen us do this 2-3 years ago. It was because of guidelines. It was because of what we were told to do. And in Sweden, we are very good at following guidelines. We go against rules, but we're good at following guidelines. We're the only country that didn't have a law stating you must stay home. And actually people did that by themselves because that is the Swedish culture. We take responsibility. why we work in silos.
Mm.
So making sure that we get away from that is going to help us facing the attacker. How many minutes do I have left?
7 minutes.
7 minutes, good, then I know I need to fasten. So attackers, their maturity has risen tremendously. Not just a little, but if you look at their capabilities 6 months ago, well, I'm sorry to say, that which is now known to the public 6 months ago, they were already sitting on 3.5 years. But sure, they've become great. Not good, they have become great. They have complete help desk and service desk for you to get off your couch, pay them, and get your computer decrypted if you infected yourself with malware. Do you know who the #1 target for malware is?
Management.
You're catching on. So if we then very quickly go through the other teams, well, security, we already talked about it a little, and I take this from a DevSec and Ops perspective to make it very plain. I don't agree with it necessarily that it needs to be silos. It's just for today's effort, making it easier what each other's roles are supposed to be. But ideally, the ops team or the security team is supposed to help you protect the organization. Anyways, what the people in general forget is that the security team is supposed to do a lot more. You are supposed to learn from a daily perspective what is out there. What are the actual threats that could perceive your organization? But if you don't talk with management, what do you know, or how do you know what to protect and why? So if you are in a budget meeting, for example, and you as a blue do not talk with white, you can have these awesome proposals, but I'm promising you, you're not getting your money because you're not aligning their intent and their target as such. Even though you think you have this very important, management's going to say no. Development is very much about making sure you apply the right practices in your code. So who can you learn best from if you want to write code? Well, for one, you want it to be operable on any platform that you want to deploy. So most of you use Docker or other types of tools and mechanisms. And that's just one of these easier things to make it less likely your code is not running as it should. That we've learned. But how do you protect your Docker container? How do you make sure that that part is not hackable or that you use the right constraints? Knowledge from both the attacking team and the defending team is kind of necessary to have that nitty-gritty understanding. You don't need to know it perfectly, but you need to understand, what do I need to do to make it less likely that when I try to write my secure code, if I write secure code, I can deploy it safely. And you can, do I need to remind you never to trust user input? 99% of everything we have is user input, unless you're a data analyst. Then it's just called bad quality.
Yeah.
Ops team, mostly infrastructure. But the ops team themselves will have code running from developers. And that collaboration, it's been horrible since day one. I'm sorry, but developers are complaining it's not running well enough in production, and production is screaming at the developers. We need to become better at this collaboration. We need to make sure that this becomes less of a friction. And we can start doing that by taking coders and make them work together with the attackers and become more orange and make them available in the team, in the coding teams and such. The advantage of that is that over time, you get this shift of positions, and a lot of people call them security champions, for example, or operation champions. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes. I haven't heard operations champions before.
Sorry?
I haven't heard about operations champions before.
They are there,
Okay.
especially if you go to more compliance-driven organizations.
Okay.
But they are there. But the point is that they usually put things in place like the web application firewall or the dictionary filters and whatnot. But yeah, and these, everyone hates them, but they are your non-functional requirements that you cannot go around. But they are there to help the business meet their goals. But they're not operations, they're not developers, and they're not security. They sit there in the middle together with management only for one reason. They are also one of those teams that is the worst explained and the worst actually figured out what they are supposed to do and how they are supposed to do it. But they are one of the people you should be absolute friends with, because they usually either tell you you can go this direction or you can't. So as a builder, knowing your non-functional requirements, like, okay, this data is not allowed to be processed in this way because it's personal data, or a password field is never going to be allowed in clear text anywhere. So make sure you never have the original password. 85% of all companies I've reviewed for the past 5 years still does it, or changes the password in advance and adds some miracle things. You're not supposed to do that, but it happens. And functions like this, if they are good, sweet, then it's fine. But they usually aren't. They look at the rules, and this collaboration with the coders, with the ops team, with the security team is not there. So they cannot empower themselves. Neither can you. It just becomes mumbo jumbo 9 out of 10 times, or a requirement we don't understand. Can anyone relate to that? So what will we then do? Well, I've already said it 10 times over. Collaborate, collaborate, but also communicate. Collaboration and communication is not a one-way street. This today has been mostly a one-way street, but I'm trying to get some feedback from you while I'm talking. But we need to really make sure that we actually help each other understand what is out there, but also from a management perspective, require from our developers to go into that dialogue. A management figure or a good project manager connects their compliance and developers every single month at least, to make sure that everyone understands what is it that we're actually trying to build. The why, the vision, how to make things as a builder is going to be detrimental. Because if you can picture it, you can make it. But one of the biggest fallacies with developers is that the way you figure a solution is going to be and the way management has it are two different things. And if you ask 8 people to draw the exact same Mona Lisa, everyone's seen it, but everyone will draw something else. It's not because of skill, but how they perceived the image, how they thought it looked like. So how do we then do it in general on a day-to-day basis? My message is learn from each other, communicate with each other. And instead of just being the one color, become a plural of colors as such. It's okay to go from red to orange to yellow, or work towards management. The more you advance in your career, the less you will code. The more you work with security, the less of security work you will do. Because you will go towards the center. You will start to understand and communicate the bigger picture. But if you don't collaborate, do you know how prisms work in light? Do you know how paint works? If you mix all the colors together in light, you get white. If you do it with paint, you get black. You can do it for good, you could do it for evil. And most of us sitting here today is aiming towards good. So, yes. So I'm going to skip my last slide, but if you want to get anything done in an organization, and this is both to you, the project managers and management down, if there's something that goes wrong within most companies today, is the misalignment of goals versus security. Security, as I started open to talk with, is there to help the organization reach its goals. The problem is that no one explains it or performs it that way. If you have a small project, which is going to earn them 300,000 euros, they're not going to spend 500,000 unless there's other interests in there. They might do that, but normally that return on investment ain't there. So what you need to do is make sure that whatever you come up with aligns with their goals. Management needs to make sure that there's transparency in there, that you understand what is it in it for them, what is in it for us. Well, you will most likely get paid your wages. They will most likely get a bonus, and the company will have gains, ideally, if we put it to numbers. But there's usually a lot more to it. Apple wanted to make the most user-friendly and good device. Microsoft, well, they just wanted to earn money. How they said it and how they portray it, that's the different things. And those are the different interactions. They made a why and made that vision clear back then. Over time, visions and missions change. But for some reason, security usually doesn't. It's the same thing. And for security to work, we need to adapt. We need to make sure that the goals of tomorrow are being kept and met, but also those goals from the future, especially when we look at new projects, are reevaluated. And that's where we go wrong with cloud. Security in cloud, when you go cloud, you should reevaluate every single control you put into place from the first time. You cannot take the old traditional requirements that you have built up for the past 20 years and apply them to cloud, for example. 99% of all the companies I worked with for the past 20 years made that mistake. The threat landscape or the threat around your projects are not the same going cloud than being on-prem. They're completely different. From a detail perspective, in a large line perspective, from a management perspective, it's going to be the exact same. I want to be up, I want to be secure, and I want my product very easily broken down. But if you go down into the organization, it requires upskilling, it requires knowledge of how to do cloud. We must understand from a compliance perspective, where is our data? How does our data look like when it's being accessed, and so on. And if we don't talk to each other, that picture, that Mona Lisa, you can forget about it. It doesn't look like a copy machine. You will get Kalle Anka, everything in a different way, because people's values, the way we are, the way we interpret information is also going to be different. So that what I missed on slide 2 was the thing about security awareness. There was this color called orange. Everyone forgets about security awareness, but the fact that you're here today, listening to my mumbling jumble, will have at least given you some information about how to think and how to communicate and think about the role that you have within the organization. And hopefully also understand that ChatGPT is not going to solve your problems. It might look so today, but no. She, on the other hand, might have a different opinion. I don't know. It's just my way of ice breaking, whatever you're going to talk about. But thank you for coming, because you are at least taking the first step in becoming more knowledgeable around security. And hopefully after the day, you have an idea of how do I identify today? Where do I want to be in the future? And if you're looking for certain types of pen testing or testing in general, maybe this color schematic and map can help you a little bit in finding out what is it that I'm looking for. Am I looking for a pen tester that is red, or am I looking for a security person, which is just defend? And all of a sudden, all these websites you're visiting start to make complete sense, because all of them, if they did it right, actually use the correct color. Thank you.